I'm joined along with the Timothy Zahn at Pensacon. How are you doing, Mr. Zahn?
I'm doing great, thank you.
I have a few questions here for you. Where did the desire for writing come from?
It was very well hidden, I suppose. Where I started was a TV show back in 1975. I watched it and I said, I could write better than that. So I sat down, and over the next 2 weeks in spare time, I wrote a science fiction story, which wasn't any better than the TV episode, was considerably worse. But it showed me that writing was fun, and picked it up as a hobby after that. I'd written a couple things when I was younger, but never really finished anything. So suddenly it was a fun hobby, and I kept at it until I sold my first story in 1978.
What was that first story?
It was called Ernie. It was a story about a boy who could teleport an inch at a time, which sounds like a pretty useless talent, and I came up with a way for it to be useful in the context of the story.
That's very interesting. You've written some of the greatest science fiction novels. What have been some of your favorite to write?
Well, obviously, Star Wars is a lot of fun to write, from Heir to the Empire to Scoundrels. It's just been a joyous ride. Lucasfilm and the publishers, Bantam and Del Rey, have been wonderful to work with, very professional. I hope I will still be writing Star Wars when they decide what they want to do with the expanded universe. Other books I've enjoyed, Icarus Hunt as a standalone, the Cobra series, Quadrails. Yeah, actually, everything I've written, I've enjoyed doing. I like them all for different reasons, different purposes, goals in each book. But they've all been fun, and I hope they're all worth reading.
You created a few characters when you first started in the Star Wars universe, and you have fleshed out the relationship between Luke Skywalker and Mara Jade. Was this a conscious choice at the beginning? Did you have the end goal that they would be married in mind?
Well, I always knew that Luke and Mara would be good for each other, but at the end of the Thrawn trilogy, it was way too soon to do anything of a romantic or that kind of relationship. It was they were barely starting to become friends, so it would have been very cheesy and very unrealistic to do anything there. I had always hoped something would happen, and about a year after Last Command came out, I was contacted by Bantam, asked if I would do a final book in their series, since I'd started out the Bantam series through the last one in the 12 that they had contracted to Lucasfilm for. And I told them I wanted to do two things. I wanted to end the war with the Empire, since it had been going on for 15 plus years, Star Wars timeline, and I wanted to get Luke and Mara together. And they said, fine for the first, but no for the second. I said, well, in that case, I'm not interested in doing the book, but thanks for asking. About 2 weeks later, they came back and said, well, okay, you can do that. The amusing part of that was that this was 93, I think, end of 93, end of 94, with Spectre of the Past coming out in 97, Vision of the Future 98. There were stories going on around the internet and the fan groups that Luke was poison to any relationship because Callista went off, and there were a couple other women he got involved with who disappeared then. And people were saying, Lucasfilm has said that Luke will never have a full relationship. And I'm sitting there knowing that we've already got it set up, and the reason all the other women keep disappearing is all the other authors know it too, and so they are writing the female possible love interest out of the books, and no one ever breathed a word of it. There was a secret that came all the way to the end. All the writers were incredibly professional. No one leaked it. But it was a deliberate effort on everybody's part, but it was amusing to watch the speculation.
That is really cool to hear, because I would have never known that story. Allegiance introduced the Hand of Judgment to the extended universe. Lerone, Brightwater, Grave, Quiller, and Marcross. These stormtroopers have a developed sense of morality. When you picture stormtroopers, you usually don't think of someone that looks out for the little guy. They are more ruthless killers. Did you have that in mind when you wrote Allegiance, that you wanted someone that everyone could relate to?
Yeah, it was basically a recognition that in any army, no matter who the leaders are, the Nazi army had a lot of good men in it who are doing what they were ordered to do and what they thought was best for their nation and their buddies next to them in the line and such. And that was it was an acknowledgement that even in the emperor's army and legions, there were people who, as the hand of judgment themselves pointed out, we joined up to suppress evil and to bring order and justice to the galaxy, and we were being betrayed. So they were always a group of moral soldiers, as there are in any army. And I wanted to point out, the emperor gives the orders, and people go off, the stormtroopers go off and shoot people, but they are doing it and some of them are probably enjoying killing civilians or aliens, but a lot of them are becoming disillusioned. And having always enjoyed things like Zorro and the Incredible Hulk TV show, the whole idea of a group of guys who are walking around, but when they put on their armor, they're essentially like superheroes and the defenders of the poor. It was always something I've always liked, and it was a chance to do that in the Star Wars universe.
You pointing out Zorro really brings me back to my childhood. I loved watching the black and white Zorro, and I guess that's why these set of stormtroopers really ring true to me, because I've always watched them. You created another character in the Thrawn series, and of course that's Thrawn, and he's been one of my favorite since that. His mental prowess is so great that it rivals the Force and even can best it at times. What was the process of developing this character for the books?
When I was first offered the Thrawn trilogy, one of my goals was or in fact the top goal is to write something that feels like Star Wars but is not what George Lucas has already done. So that meant no big, tall, black armored guy who's choking people, and no short, brown cowled, cackling villain who's manipulating everything from the background. So I started thinking, what kind of person would be a more dangerous villain than Vader? And in the global sense, it is someone who can lead by loyalty rather than fear or intimidation, because Thrawn's people will fight for him, they will die for him, whether he's in the room or not, because they trust him and they are loyal to him. So starting from that, the question was, what kind of commander will inspire loyalty? Well, someone who is tactically brilliant so that they know going into a battle they're likely to win it. Someone who cares enough about the troops that he's not going to waste you in a clearly lost cause. He's going to pull you out and we'll regroup for later. There are several other qualifications that a good leader, it seemed to me, would have. And then finally make him an alien, because the Emperor clearly doesn't like aliens, and if he can make it to Grand Admiral status, he must be something very, very special. And Thrawn just falls out of that equation. It's really quite simple.
You were saying how Darth Vader always used fear to manipulate his troops to serve him. The only time Thrawn actually kills someone for making a mistake is in, well, there might be another time, but is in the first Heir to the Empire book, and it's one of the trainers, and he didn't train the person the right way. I always thought that was he let everybody try at least, and then I always thought it was really cool.
Well, actually, in The Last Command, there's a parallel scene where someone does try something and fails, and Thrawn promotes him, because the first guy wasn't trying, wasn't caring. We cannot have that in Thrawn's military. The second guy failed, but he tried something new when there wasn't an established procedure, and instead of being punished, he is promoted. So it was nice to be able to do that, those contrasting scenes.
I had forgot about that, but that speaks so much for the character. With the new movies coming out, would you want to see Thrawn as the new villain in the new movies?
I would love to see anything I've done show up in the movies. for the bragging rights alone and the ego boo and yelling out loud in a darkened theater. Wow. Yeah, I'd love to see Thrawn there. I'd like to see Mara. I'd love to see any of the characters or references to them. We don't know right now what's happening with the expanded universe. There's a group at Lucasfilm that is sorting through all of the books and comics and games and deciding what is going to be considered canon from now on and what is not. Until they make their recommendations and make their decisions, we won't know if Thrawn will ever show up. He may be delegated to alternate universe status. If that turns out to be the case, well, so be it. It's their property. It's always been their property, and all of us who write in Star Wars know that. If they choose whatever they choose to do, that's their right and their privilege. And we have had a darn good time of just playing in George Lucas's sandbox, whatever comes.
That's a great way to look at it, because when I first heard about them deciding what is extended universe or expanded universe and what's not, I automatically thought, I've put so much time in all of these books, and then I thought, well, I've had the adventure, so whatever they say is it's theirs, but I still get to have that adventure. I've thought Benedict Cumberbatch, he's a actor that played Khan in the newest Star Trek. Would you see him as a contender for Grand Admiral Thrawn's character?
People ask a lot who I would cast as Mara or Thrawn or Card or somebody. The fact is that I see characters in terms of personality and attitude, not necessarily facial features. You have a description of Thrawn, blue skin, glowing red eyes. You have Mara's red gold hair and a dancer's figure. And that's really about all I put in. I think any actor who can bring off the attitude of Thrawn, the dignity, the presence, put the makeup on him and the CGI eyes, and it'll work quite well. I've had everybody from Tommy Lee Jones to most recently somebody suggested Kevin Spacey, and having seen the way he deals with his character in The Negotiator, the very cold, very precise character. I could see him doing that as well. I was talking, we had a panel here on Star Wars, and Dave Dorman said that when he was illustrating Thrawn, in his mind was Christopher Walken. So you pick an actor, if he can pull off the attitude and all, he will do just fine. Same for Mara.
The reason I suggest Cumberbatch is because he plays Sherlock Holmes, and he does a very good Sherlock Holmes, the best in my opinion. And I see Thrawn as a sort of a Thrawn in the way he presents himself in the series.
Yeah, I've enjoyed Sherlock very much. Benedict Cumberbatch does a wonderful job of that. The only thing, yes, he would do a fine Thrawn as well. He might be a bit young, but that's easily negotiable. I can see Thrawn giving a lot of his lines, but Thrawn would do it a bit slower. Cumberbatch as Sherlock rattles things off, which is very impressive and absolutely right for that character. It would not be quite right for Thrawn. But again, Cumberbatch is an excellent actor. I have no doubt whatsoever he could pull that off.
Are there any upcoming projects that we should be looking out for?
I am starting a collaboration with David Weber set in the Honor Harrington universe, about 300 years before Honor herself. We're calling it Manticore Ascendant, and the first book will come out in, I think it's technically this October, but we're planning a launch party at DragonCon in late August. So we'll be keeping people up to date on my Facebook page on all of that. But that has been a lot of fun to do. I also have continuing my Cobra series. I've got a new series ready to launch called Sybil's War, about a girl who's kidnapped to an alien spaceship where human and alien groups are busy repairing it, and things naturally are not what they seem. So I've got several other projects either in the works or on the back burner, so I'm going to be busy for quite a while.
How could our listeners find you on Facebook or Twitter?
Facebook.com/Timothy Zahn. Come on over. I keep people up to date on when things are happening, and things happen slowly when you're a writer. But I read everything that gets posted there. Read every message. Try to respond to most of them, and we've got some chatting going on here and there. I'm not currently on Twitter, so Facebook is it.
Awesome. Thank you for the interview.